time. These are the all-time players from the past behind. These are the all-time 11.
Lone players we've fallen in love with. This has been occupying my mind for a while. And as we record, Haji Minoga is out. Are they playing tonight? That's going to age it. I think he might be home soon, depending on the result.
I think it's Saturday, last game.
It's Saturday. That's fine.
Yeah. I was just watching. Actually, I managed to see the second game he was playing.
Oh, yeah.
On Sunday. And it's really surreal watching him play on the TV. And you know when they do the lineup at the start and they go across, and I was thinking, you know what, he plays for us. It's quite an incredible moment.
It's pretty mad.
Really interesting how he was being played, though. He was being played at a standard right back. Didn't allow him to get forward at all. Didn't recognise him from how he plays for us. But that's, I guess, the power of the manager, and you do what you're told to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he's going to be a potential for our 11 that we're going to pick tonight. But as with all things, there are a couple of rules, I suppose. We're going to go for a 4-4-2 because that's easy, and that'll kind of be unless there's something mad happens and we need to put 3 midfielders in. There are going to be some difficult decisions. I've already looked at this list of players that I've been putting together. I don't know how we're going to get 2 centre mids out of it. There's far too many, and yeah. Well, let's make a start. Let's go for goalkeepers. Now, I've got 3 written down, and there's a very obvious choice. So we've got Lewis Ward that was suggested by Reese on Facebook and yourselves, Joe and Julian, who signed in 2017, made 25 appearances from Reading. Yeah, both you agree that Lewis Ward should be the goalkeeper for this team.
Oh, sorry,
you go.
You go, Julian. You go. Sorry.
Yeah, he did stand out for me. I've got 3 goalies on my list, and if we were going for most successful, then you'd probably end up with Nick Pope, because he has been the most successful goalie on loan. Also, Alex McCarthy was on my list as well. Although both of those two didn't really cut it, but I guess that's what the loan system's all about, isn't it? They send them out to make their mistakes with us and go on and become better players. But for me, Lewis Ward was pretty much the best goalkeeper. Only concern was his sort of footwork. He was caught out a couple of times, I seem to remember, but I thought he more than made up for it. And I think, Joe, you'll probably agree. You know, we thought that he was destined for a league career, and proves that that's right. That's where he is now.
Yeah, I mean, he was a giant, wasn't he? I remember one game away at Solihull, and he was, I think, the only player on the pitch taller than the Solihull centre backs. And that was a 0-0, but I remember it being a memorable 0-0 for his performance. Single-handedly got us a point when we really struggled. But then my most memorable Lewis Ward moment, which is the only slight detractor, is the penalty shootout against Ebbsfleet. To jog your memories of that. No. Seeing your reaction there for the listener, Will has just rolled his eyes.
That was a nightmare, wasn't it?
So I believe, didn't he say? So I'm sure listeners will correct us, but I think he saved 2 penalties, but then missed his own penalty, and then we were 3-1 up in the shootout, and then lost the shootout, which not many teams lose penalty shootouts from that position. But sorry to bring that one up on a Wednesday evening. But no, he was still a legend, and I think kudos for even saving 2 penalties. You can't blame him for missing one. He's a goalie. He's supposed to blaze them over the bar.
Yeah, fair play. I think he's the clear winner for kind of his impact on a team for that year. Legend might be pushing it a bit far. But he's got the chance. He's got the chance. He's just moved to Charlton, so let's hope he becomes a legend. I think a statue outside of the Valley would be nice. The only other 2 I wrote down, obviously Nick Pope. He made 5 appearances, and Laurie Walker. You suggested Joe. Yeah, I mean he was fine. Generally great at shit housing, so that he's always ticking my box.
I think he's got the sub spot just because I think he was only there for a month, but I think that was under Sal I believe, where there wasn't many highlights. So the goalkeeper who is memorable in that season stood out. But yeah, he came in and sort of won us a few points.
Mm,
That's how exciting those years were.
that's how I remember it too. Yeah. Great. Right. Lewis Ward in goalkeeper. Now we come to the centre backs. A couple of suggestions we've had in. Aaron obviously suggests Haji Minoga. I've written down his best moment is still his New Year's Day celebration in front of the Woking home end. And Julian, you suggested Adam Webster on Facebook. So yeah, I mean, the other names I'm going to throw at you are Sonny Bradley from 2012, one of Dean Holdsworth's diamonds in the rough of his loan career. Jake Goodman from the same year as Adam Webster. They sat alongside each other. And Max Hunt, which was another Searle one. So those three made kind of the most appearances for Aldershot, or those five, sorry. Yeah, who would you go for out of those two, Joe? Not out of those two. Who of those two? No, watch two of those.
It's gonna be a fun edit for you, Will.
It's horrendous. Yeah, which would you go for?
You know, this is a really interesting almost exercise, isn't it? Because there's players I'd forgotten about. I'd forgotten about Sonny Bradley, and if you look back at that Holdsworth squad, loan FC we were at that time, really. I don't know what the loan rules were at the time, but I think you're allowed a certain amount in your team, and we must have maximised it.
Yeah, players had to sit out. That was how many we had. Like they had to not be in the squad. That was amazing.
But you look at some of those players we had loaned in, and some of those players we had in that squad, and the careers they went on to have in a team that was relegated from the Football League. It's actually insane to look back at that and think, how on earth did we go down? I mean, there's obvious reasons, the manager being one of them, but that's a whole separate podcast. Holdsworth had enough shout outs at Kidderminster on Saturday. So, but yeah, Sonny Bradley was a colossus, actually, wasn't he? But I don't know if I fell in love with him. I don't think I fell in love with any of that squad. But Haji Minoga, I love that guy. Yeah, I think he won all our hearts away at Woking. Max Hunt's an interesting shout, but he's not really kicked on. He was just quite a good defender in quite a poor side. Adam Webster, yeah, he's had a really successful career, hasn't he? But yeah, I'd go with Haji Minoga, and the other one's tough. We'll have to decide that between us.
Ooh, tough. Yeah, so Sonny Bradley did have two loans with us. So he was there the season before. I think that was still signed by Holdsworth. So he had like a season where we were up and we weren't relegated. And then he was also in that relegation team, which I think kind of sullied his reputation at Aldershot because he was brilliant in that first season and then obviously was part of a relegation team. Also, it was alongside Troy Brown as well, who I've written down, who made 17 appearances on loan from Rotherham. And yeah, Julian, who do you reckon for the two centre-backs?
Yeah, my initial thoughts were Adam Webster. I mean, he came to us at such a young age, and he was at some stage he was a bit like Bambi. He was, sort of all over the place, but you could see that the potential was there, and I thought he sort of grew into his time with us. I think from memory that there was, most of that first season he was there, and alongside Goodman, I thought they actually looked quite good together. But if you'd asked me at that time which one of them's going to go on, I would have probably said Goodman. So again, just shows how much I know. But Sonny Bradley, for me, quality player. So I think Haji Minoga has to be in there. So for me, it's probably Minoga and Bradley.
Yeah. Okay. Executive decision. Sonny Bradley and Haji Minoga. We can always go back to this because next up is the right and left backs, which we don't really have many. So we might have to move Minoga into a right back position. So I'm going to use him as the only other right back that we've signed, or at least played there. It's going to be between Haji Minoga and George Fowler. How about that? Signed from Ipswich Town, 2017 under Gary Waddock. Made 19 appearances on loan. Obviously, he went on to sign for us eventually once his contract ran out. Joe, I'll come to you first. Who's your right back?
Well, I think it depends, like you say, on the positioning. Of the two, I'm more in love with Minoga.
Mm.
But I think Fowler. What impressed me about George Fowler is his work rate, and also he's when he did play centre back, and even when he played wing back, his aerial ability for someone not actually that tall was very impressive, and he actually chipped in, I think, with not loads of goals, but he did score a few as well. Yeah, I would pick Minoga out of the two, but I wouldn't be disappointed if Fowler was in the lineup.
Fair play. And Julian, what do you reckon on that
Yeah, I
duel?
agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd go George Fowler at right back, keep Minoga in the centre. I think when Fowler and it was Adam McDonnell, I think they both came from Ipswich at the same time. And very early on in the season, I think they were both with us by the end of August. And at the time, they did both make a huge difference to the team. So, and Fowler was with us, right the way through. I remember him playing in a centre back role when we were on our playoff season run. So for the length of time he was with us overall, I would put him in there at right back.
Yeah, fair enough. I loved George Fowler when he first arrived. So it changed slightly once when we weren't very good anymore. But I think he can safely go into that right back berth. So sorry, Adam Webster, you're not getting in this back line, Sonny. The left backs, we had quite a few. I've noted down 4 here. We've got, starting off in 2013, Dan Butler from Portsmouth. 2015, under 2 different managers, Nick Anderton and then Tom Richards. And then in 2018, Dominic Bernard, who played the most games out of any of those. He played 35 times, coming from Birmingham. Come to you first again, Joe. Left backs, what do you reckon?
Yeah, see, this is quite an interesting one because you've named some of those, and I've just gone, were we just naming them because they were on loan and they fit the position?
That's basically it. Yeah,
I definitely didn't fall in love with some of them. I don't even think I noticed some of them. But one of the first players I wrote down when I was looking at players that were loaned in that position, I really like Dominic Bernard. Might not be everyone's choice, but I don't remember him having a poor game for us. He wasn't standout, but he wasn't really a flair player, but he was just a very, very good all-round player, I think, and he's gone on to have a solid career in the Football League. I think it was Birmingham we loaned him from, wasn't it? Yeah, so he was quite young at the time and has gone on to do well. I'd pick him just for solidity, really, in that back 4.
yeah. We want to make sure they can defend as a unit. So, what about you, Julian? Out of those options,
for me, it was Dan Butler. Actually, I thought again, really sweet left foot. Thought he stood out at the time. He was playing in a pretty poor team from memory, so I think he did stand out quite well. And again, when he went back to Portsmouth, I think similar to Adam Webster, they both sort of kicked on once they left us. So I'll go for Dan Butler. So I think, Will, you're going to have the casting vote on this one.
casting vote. Oh, neither of them, because I wrote down kind of best moment for shots. Neither of them have got a moment from me, so that's I can't even use that. I'm gonna go with Dominic Bernard. I think he out of that batch, I think he was the most. I was most excited about him signing. Maybe it didn't fit the bill, but coming from Birmingham, a very young prospect, I thought this guy's bound to be good, and he was generally all right. So we'll go with him.
Wasn't he?
Consistent, yeah. Which is what we've kind of given that George Fowler his right back berth as well for that kind of same. He was consistent. He wasn't making horrendous mistakes.
A consistent 11. That's what we've got.
Yeah.
Really easily pleased, don't we? They'll finish mid-table every year, and we'll be happy.
I'm writing that down. Consistent 11, because Aaron Morris is getting in that every day of the week. He was Mr. Reliable, and Ben Harding. Speaking of Ben Harding, we're on to the central midfield role. Now, there is so many, so much so that I'm going to instantly exclude Josh Stokes from discussions because he's just signed on loan, and Dean Parrott, who only made 4 appearances, but he was class. But I'm going to say you've got to make a minimum of 5.
Oh, I've just got to cross him off then. He was on my list.
Was he on your list? Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah. Maybe we could
Bringing
add
in
him.
rules midway through the selection process is well thought out.
Just stoking the fires. Right. Let's go through the kind of main 3 that I think we've got to choose from. We're going to mention probably some others, and Dean Perrett will be in there. The first, well, I'm putting him in a centre mid role, centre attacking mid, is Dean Morgan, signed from MK Dons in 2010. Obviously in that playoff run, he was doing bits. Famous obviously for his Cheltenham goal where he looped it back over the defender and volleyed it home. We had a message on Facebook from Rob who said that he was much more than the goal at Cheltenham as well. Whenever we needed a goal in the run into the playoffs, he popped up with it. In terms of impact within a short space of time, I don't think he's been topped. He also did it a level higher than most being mentioned on the thread, which is a fair point. And I would also mention that Lincoln at home game when we were on the verge of the playoffs, and that was like the Dean Morgan show. I think he scores 2, sets up the other, or was it scores 1? He definitely set up
there
1,
was
scored
a
1.
man of the match performance. That was it, wasn't it? He was superb that day. I still remember it.
We
I think
needed
it was
someone.
the Morgan show, wasn't it? Because wasn't Marvin around at the time as
I
well?
think, yeah, that's what I'm just trying to think, whether he set up more Marvin for one of the goals and also set up Dean Howell on the left hand side. I'm not sure, but he definitely scored one where he kind of faked onto his left about twice and then fired it home. So he's in the shortlist. The second on the shortlist, Kundai Benyu. Aaron and Carl sent their suggestion in as well. Signed in 2016 with Gary Waddock. Played 22 times, scored 5. The kind of most famous of which were the 2 away at Solihull. So we had a couple of messages on Facebook for that. Carl, one of the great loan signings ever. He single-handedly pulled that team along and was brilliant. And he mentions the 2 goals away at Solihull. And then the final one of this 3 that we're going to choose from, I think, unless we have any late shouts, is Scott Davis, who we had 3 loan spells. Obviously, the most famous of which was the first season where his goal at Torquay and just generally dragging us out of out of holes with his free kicks. So yeah, those are the 3, and I'm going to come to you first, Joe, with any other suggestions you might have and who you think is your midfield 2.
I mean, I think you've highlighted probably the list of the ones I would choose, but I'd just give a shout out to Jack Powell. He was a shining light in, again, quite a poor Danny Searle side. I remember him having really, really excellent set pieces, and I think he came in and sort of helped us pick up some results in quite a dire season. He'd be on the bench, he wouldn't start, but I just wanted to give him a shout out because we can forget some of those loan players from seasons that weren't that memorable. But yeah, I would be picking Scott Davies. Just he is, when I was 10 or 11 years old, he was the player that I loved. And yeah, he was part of an amazing promotion squad. And yeah, away at Torquay was only down the road for me. That was just one of the most memorable nights. And he's just really respectful of the club since then. I think we still love him. And we always will. Yeah, brilliant player. He's going straight in. And it's a really tough decision then between Kundai Benyu and Dean Morgan for me. Yeah, I would. Kundai Benyu, you mentioned his performance away at Solihull. Was one of the best individual performances of recent years. He just pretty much single-handedly ran the show, didn't he? But that midfield that year with Kanu and Mensah was a really is not as good as our current front three now. Obviously it's them more of a midfield, but them as a three were terrifying. For a period they were just scoring and assisting each other the whole time, and he was a big part of that. And I think he sort of came to us as a bit of a rough diamond as well, and then sort of made a little cult status for himself when he came. So Dean Morgan or Kundai Benyu. I'm just going to hold that one, let you guys chat it out.
Yeah, go to you, Julian. What do you reckon?
Thanks, Joe, for that. Yeah, I agree with you on Jack Powell. I thought if you're looking for a lone 11 that have had the most impact, I think Jack Powell really did. You never know what you're going to get with a lone player, do you? You don't know what their intentions are. So you just don't know whether they're just turning up because they've been told to come or whether they're generally interested. And he showed a real interest for me. He really wanted to pick it up and run with it. Having said that, I think he'd be, like you say, Joe, on the bench. Scott Davis is all day long going to be in the team. Not going to have any arguments about that with anybody. He's got to be in there. That night at Torquay will live long in the memory. The whole day was incredible. I actually forgot that it wasn't near the end of the season. I was always thinking it was near the end of the season, but actually it wasn't. It was early March, that game. But I think it was the one that really sort of announced our intentions to go. And of course, that last minute winner was just unbelievable. So Scott Davis all day long, and Kundai Benyu for me. He has to go in there as well. Again, that three of, as you said, Joe, Mensah, Kanu, and him. And then I think he went off to Celtic afterwards, didn't he? Because he had such a good loan
he did.
period.
Yeah.
And then I think he ended up in Wealdstone. So we're not quite sure what happened there.
I think that was via Scandinavia somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, he went to Finland, didn't he, or somewhere?
Yeah, he's got one of those. Have you ever seen on Twitter those Wikipedia footballer things where you just see the club list and you've got to work out who it was? His is quite the bingo sheet.
Superb.
Yeah, I would put him in there just again because the impact that he had. He really came in and just grabbed hold of it and took us forward. So, yeah, for me, it's Scott Davis and Kundai in there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just some shout outs for other players that we can't mention or can't put in this team. Manuel Jalecki in 2014, his first season with us was absolutely unreal. Fabien Robert was French silk for a good half of the season. Oliver Bosnich, how about that? Bosnich, the Australian in 2009. As we mentioned earlier, Dean Parrott from Tottenham for 4 games. Danny Rose was on loan, apparently. I didn't realise. I thought we just had him as a player. And another player we've mentioned before, Adam McDonnell, in there as well. So sorry they couldn't get in the team. So I've in some one of the worst admin errors of all time, I've somehow got rid of the left wing and right wingers that I noted down. So we might go for a 4-3-3, you know. Unless anyone was absolutely like if everyone wanted either of Reece Williams, Joel Grant. I'm trying to remember the other ones that I wrote down. It's really annoying.
Oh, Joel Grant. You said that name.
I know. Joel Valentino.
It's a real pickle for the manager picking a formation for this team now, isn't it?
I mean,
you have
Dean
to play
Morgan
4-4-2 or 4-3-3.
No. Yeah, I'm going to have to edit that out.
Are we going to have a top 11 lone players that no one's ever heard of?
I mean, that's absolutely got to happen. I mean, even Nick Anderton that I mentioned earlier, I don't remember him at all. But
I've just thought of Rasulo, who came to us from MK Dons, I think.
Giorgio Rasulo.
Albert Jarrett.
Genuinely looking through it was genuinely hilarious. Some of the players we signed. Yeah,
I had to scroll through 2 pages when I've looked at the Holdsworth years.
Yeah, it's generally. Oh man, right. So we're gonna do a little change up. It's a 4-3-3. Dean Morgan in that number 10 role. He played 9 times, scored 4 times, and I think every single one was important in that playoff push. And yeah, if it wasn't for Troy Brown slipping who knows where we could be right now. Let's move on to the strikers. We've got quite a few for this area, and we've got 3 to choose from. We can obviously bring in Joel Grant as well, but I just haven't got any stats on him. So if you want to go for a right wing, left wing, central striker, we can do. So I'm going to mention a few names, and they are Jake Robinson. That was suggested by Julian and Aaron. Johnny Dixon, Carl on Facebook. He says, yeah, I remember my dad and a few other fans setting up a player fund through the Aldershot News, which was headed up by Nicky Bull's girlfriend at the time. I never knew about this. We managed to get a boy in on loan from Wickham, and my God, he knew where the goal was. Got to be up there as one of the best loan signings. That loan, Johnny Dixon, was 2004, 20 games, 11 goals. Next suggestion was Aidan O'Brien from Millwall. I've put down Danny Lopez under Dean Holdsworth, probably the best. I mean, I've never seen a Spanish player at the Rec, and my God, it was something else. Dan Holman, 2014, obviously scored he put the cross in for Jordan Roberts at Portsmouth, and then kind of the recent 2 are Corey Andrews and Sinclair Armstrong. Whether they get in, who knows? Joe, I'll come to you first. What do you reckon for the strikers and how we're going to put them together?
No, it's quite interesting that we haven't had any strikers that have really set the world alight, I don't think. Danny Lopez is a great shout. He wasn't there for long, was he? And I think he was loaned out to about 4 or 3 different clubs in the same league in the same season. I think he ended up going to Barnet or something. But
12 games, 6 goals.
Yeah,
superb.
I mean, there's not many strikers. Does that fit the quota for enough games? It doesn't it? Goal every 2 games.
It better.
There you go. It's a bit of a rogue choice, but you might have persuaded me just by putting him there. This is a really tough one, isn't it? Johnny Dixon, I think. He's one of my early sort of shot supporting memories. But yeah, I just remember him just being a goal scorer, and I think sort of after those years, when we came back up to before we came back up to the Football League, after that when we did come up, we weren't blessed with goal scorers really, that were natural finishers, and so I'd go Johnny Dixon. I think I remember one game. I mean, someone might correct me on this, but away at Weymouth, I think it was, where we scored a brace. And I think that was sort of in the January, February, or our playoff run. And I remember that. So yeah, I'd go Johnny Dixon and Danny Lopez. I didn't think I'd say that before the pod, but let's go with that.
Nice. And have you got a shout for a third? If we're gonna make this
if we're gonna make it a
3-3, yeah. Or is there any other player that you think would fit into that kind of front line? A Joel Grant, a Reece Williams. I'm thinking of any. Joseph and Gesson. That was the other one I had. Sorry.
This is hilarious, by the way. Do you know what? Yeah, Joel Grant could play in the front 3, couldn't he? I mean, I think he was our record transfer fee probably before recent times where we've sold Josh Stokes for. I think Joel Grant was about 100 grand, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it to Crewe? Yeah. Put Joel Grant in there. He went on to have a really good career, and I think he was a really good player for us. Just a shame he wasn't there for longer, but obviously he got snapped up, and we couldn't say no to that sort of money at that time.
Right. And Julian, what do you reckon? What's your front 3 looking like?
Yeah, I initially went for Joel Grant. I think just the impact again he had on that title-winning season and taking it into League 2. Well, I don't think he actually played in League 2, did he?
No, left us early. Yeah.
Left us early, yeah. But Joel Grant was one for me. Jake Robinson, I thought, was probably the best finisher that I've seen. He knew where the goal was. And Aidan O'Brien, I thought, had a really good spell this, although it was short. Again, he looked quality, and for me, you could tell he was going to stay. Just throw a couple of names in there we haven't mentioned. Alfie Pavey came to us, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
So I thought he looked quite good, actually, in the couple of games he was with us. But again, just shows how much I know. And perhaps you can correct me on this one. Was Guy Maggio a loan or was he a permanent?
I tried to have a look. It seems I couldn't find out, to be honest.
I think he was a permanent signing.
I think
But
so.
as we were discussing these loan players, I was just thinking we did a separate pod for sort of bizarre cult heroes. I really liked Guy Maggio. He just
Yeah, I thought it
wasn't
was
there for
class.
very long. And if you're talking about Wikipedia footballers and their club
Yeah,
list, if you could name some of Guy Maggio's clubs, that's the whole podcast, just reeling those off.
I feel like we've slightly rushed it. But let's go with Joel Grant. That's locked in. Johnny Dixon is also locked in. I think Danny Lopez deserves a spot in players that we've fallen in love with. I know that Dan and Callum listen to this will have fallen in love with Danny Lopez as well. So that's the front three that we
That's good
go
enough
with.
for me. With 12 subs.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there we have it. Lone players we've fallen in love with 11. We've got Ward in goal, Fowler at right back. Minogue and Bradley are the two centre backs. I did put this out on X as a poll to see if anyone would prefer Minogue and Webster. It came out completely even, the same amount of votes for each. So we're going to go with Minogue and Bradley. Dominic Bernard, left back. Scott Davis and Benyu are going to kind of sit a little bit. I mean, it seems scandalous to make Scott Davis sit back a little bit, but we've got Dean Morgan in front of him, so don't worry. And then we've got Johnny Dixon, Danny Lopez, and Joel Grant. I think just give them free reign. Give them free reign. They're all Mavericks. And some honourable mentions on the bench of Laurie Walker and Jack Powell. Thanks everyone for sending your suggestions in. We will do another one of these at some point. If anyone's got any ideas, then send them in to atfcpodcast@gmail.com. One other note is that when doing the edit, I realised I called him Reese Williams, which is wrong. It was Ryan Williams. I loved Ryan Williams. His best moment that I wrote down was just that he was used to seemingly wear like the baggiest shirt. And it's probably the last time I've seen a player in a baggy shirt at Aldershot. It's all these newfangled area shirts. They're all too well fitting. The old school ones, where the Italians couldn't get the size right. That's heritage. That's red and blue heritage. Anyway, I hope you like this episode. Should be another one coming soon. Cheers. Bye.